welcome to another episode of An Inside Job War on Addiction. I want to thank all the people here because they've just been so instrumental in me being able to produce this thing, and that support in everything else. Carl, Jack, Alan, Bradley, and Jane. So it's, an inside job, war on addiction, which it is a war on addiction. I always quote a doctor, best book I've ever read on this disease. His name is Dr. Gabor Mate, and he works in Vancouver, Canada, downtown, east side, hardcore addicts. And the guy, as far as I'm concerned, is brilliant. The name of the book is The Realm of the Hungry Ghost. He explains addiction, biological, chemical, neurological, physiological, medical, social, emotional, political, economical, and spiritual. And I also always say that is not going to be solved with a 3 to 7 day detox, and is what the insurance company will give out somebody on Mass Health. If you got the money, then, hopefully you do well. But the epidemic, this was from the Surgeon General about a month ago, and he stated that we are, from this epidemic, 91 people are dying a day in this country. And I'm sure that, let's say most of you, or 50%, have some connection with this epidemic or the alcohol part. But the system is broken. And I can say that because the numbers just keep going up, going up, going up. And we certainly aren't doing enough anyway. So, without further ado, my friend, old friend, for 40-something years, I was counting up the other day, Danny P. And he never likes to hear this, and so I have to be careful when I do say it. But Danny is the one who began my life in recovery. And that stems from, I was living in Clinton that morning, and it was the end. It was the end again. But I was going out the window that day, and it was 2.5 stories. And all of a sudden, it came into my head that Danny, who we drank and drugged together, but we had separated, I guess, a little in the later years, and he put a year together. I couldn't even imagine a year without drinking or drugging or smoking, or it was beyond me. But that came to mind. And that's how it began for me. And luckily, I don't know how many people would have been in my life, because there wasn't any people that were in recovery in my life. Anyway, welcome, Danny. Thank you for coming down. So I just want to ask some questions, but I know we'll trail off to some other place, but just...
Yeah, we'll veer off into the stratosphere, I think.
Danny thinks he's funny, too, by the way. I just want to say that. It's just a mild attempt at humor, and we do humor him. What age? Just tell me a little about growing up. All right.
Okay, but I wanted to say one thing. You were talking about me being sober and helping you get sober. When I first met you back in
70s.
75, I think, I was driving cab in Gardner, and you were sober at that time, 4 months sober. You were smoking dope every day,
Yeah.
but you were 4 months sober.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow.
No, it was 9 months.
Was it? Holy,
Yeah.
jeez, now I'm really in awe. But I thought it was, a double Pisces, sober 9 months. Jesus,
White knuckling it, though.
Yeah,
White
yeah.
knuckling it. It was just inevitable. I didn't know anything about AA. And, when I came in, they told me in the program, you can't have that one. And they were right. And I looked back, and that's what would start me off, and it did for that 9-month thing. And I don't want to seem like I'm contradicting myself, because I tried again and again and again. And it was just a mess. And it was a mess in a small amount of time. Yeah. So, I don't know.
The first meeting I went to was 1976, I think. I got steered there by an employer, and I didn't know anything about sobriety. I didn't know anything about AA. Didn't know anything about anything except drinking and losing, and but I identified right away with everybody, men, women, children, and it all made sense. And I said, hey, I'm an alcoholic. Why didn't I think of that?
Right.
I can't drink. So I went back, went to a handful of meetings, grabbed some pamphlets, and drank. I stayed sober 75, exactly 75 brutal days, awful. And then I drank for another 4 years. So I knew when I came in 4 years later that, I was done. I surrender. That's it.
What
So
began after the 75 days? What began? What took you back out there?
just like we say in AA, the restless. I was
Yeah.
restless, irritable, and discontented, and I was just trying to live. Oh man, I think most alcoholics and drug addicts that I've known are just highly sensitized, and it doesn't take too much to set you vibrating off in the wrong direction.
And then you came in. You came back in after 4 years. What were those years like after the 75 days when you went back out?
Just down. And matter of fact, the last 7 years of my drinking, it was over by the time I was 25, 26. It was like the old timers used to say around here, my drinker broke in 1973. After that, I kept on drinking for another 7 years because I didn't know I had an option, but it was all bad, just
Yeah.
about all bad
Yeah.
the next 7 years. But
There were no suicides in your story, though.
no, just
No.
one colossal slow motion
attempt.
suicide. That was it. And I have to say that early on, I mean, they always say nobody decides to be an alcoholic, and but I can say that I very nearly decided. By the time I was 16, I knew that I was not going to do life on life's terms, as we say, and I knew it wasn't working and it wasn't going to work, and I guess a lot of alcoholics I know, when they first saw Ray Milland in Lost Weekend.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I always liked old movies, and when I was a kid, and I've heard a lot of people say this that saw that same movie about he's an very bad alcoholic going through his last weekend with DTs and everything, and of course they played the bizarre ooh music and everything, and but my son,
there was no music in my
yeah,
recovery.
yeah,
My,
just gargling once in a while.
he makes me laugh too.
But yeah, and I know a lot of alcoholics that say, excuse me, they saw that movie as a kid or whatever, and just something clicked and said, wow, I could go out that way, you know. And but I pretty well decided by the time I had my first drink, whatever, in high school somewhere, I really, it made things click. Right at the time it did, and I said, hey, this is my ticket. I'm going to just drink my way, make it through the next however many years.
And this was at 16?
Yeah.
Or- yeah.
Right around there. And then if I get hit by a bus and a blackout along the way, so be it, And, but and the thing was then is I thought I could do it, I thought I could get away with it,
Right.
like we all do, before we realize that it's, consuming us totally, and we are not calling the shots or
Right.
making,
Right.
setting the direction.
Danny and I are products of the 60s, and we both took off on that one.
Yeah.
And, we're all dropping out. I couldn't drop out when I got back from Vietnam. I had a family. But Danny and his brother-in-law, Tommy, and not so much Ann with the acid, right?
Yeah, not really. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not too much.
Yeah, but you guys took off for a ways on that, and then smoking a lot of dope, drinking a lot of, for you, cheap wine, and
Taylor Sherry sometime. That was a little better.
because why?
Because why? Because I was sophisticated, I guess. It just came naturally.
Yeah, but beyond that,
Oh,
nobody else would drink it.
yeah. And I kept a bottle of, a pint of cognac in my bureau drawer, too, because nobody would ever ask you for sherry or cognac. So you never had to share it.
I never wanted to share.
Yeah.
So that's when you took off. What was, after high school, what was the first thing? Was that the cranberry bogs?
Let me see. I don't know. I get some of the years mixed up, but I think, no, the first thing was, oh yeah, I know what I did. I knew I was going to screw up, and my parents, of course, wanted to help me go to college and that sort of thing, and help me financially. And I said, I knew I was going to screw up, so I said, look, let me work for 6 months or so. I'll save up a little money. I'll go to Worcester Junior College, which
Yeah.
was not expensive in those days. And that way, if I screw up, which I did, it'll be on me, And so I'm glad I did it that way. But by the third semester, I was, totaled at, 10 o'clock in the morning or something. And in fact, I had a
Drinking, you mean?
yeah.
At 10?
Yeah, and I had a public speaking course I had at one time. So I had a little, it was Southern Comfort, I think
Oh,
it
yeah,
was.
that was a good one. One of my faves.
Yeah, just, grease the way. And by the time for the class, I was totally snockered out of it, and I never made the class. And so I had to learn public speaking in AA, basically.
Yeah, as we both have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a little about your childhood, all right? I know I met your mother once or twice, and she just looked old Yankee.
Cranky Yankee, that's what I
Yeah.
call
And she just looked right through me like she knew every part of my being. But it was all right. Lucky I got out of that car, came around, and, you know, if I would have stayed in that car, no. So, growing up,
Just a small town, USA, middle class, white Protestant, just kind of normal average for the 50s, I guess. And, you know, to me, the thing is, as far as drugs or alcohol, you know, anything can set us off. I mean, you know, one guy can come from a normal middle-class background, nothing extraordinary, and he winds up a drunk or an addict, and you know, somebody else goes through a horrific childhood. And I mean, you take two siblings in one family, same circumstances or
Right.
whatever, and you know, one will be a nuclear physicist and the other one will be a drunk, and you know, I don't know which one's more successful, but you know, anything can. It isn't the circumstances, put it that way, and so.
but as I had said with Dr. Mattei, and he does say it's environment, but that, I mean, it isn't in that case with one sibling is the other isn't, but especially with this epidemic,
Yeah,
it
well,
has some.
3 out of 4. There's 4 siblings in my family, and 3 out of 4 of us have long-term sobriety in AA.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So what do you think was there? I mean, you had a good upbringing.
Yeah, good upbringing. I don't know. I just, you know, I'm of the belief that people arrive here, you know, on this planet, they bring some baggage with them, you know.
Yes.
You know, unpack your knapsack and say, okay, you know, what am I, you know, let me draw a bead on things and see which way I'm supposed to go. But no, I think people arrive here with a lot of stuff in motion,
Arrive
in
here
progress.
in
Well,
recovery.
I mean, well, no, I mean arrive
Oh,
to
the
when
planet.
they're first born. Yeah, come into this incarnation or whatever. They bring a lot of stuff with them, and well, at least I know I did, and so it really, I don't think it would matter. You know, in my case, as far as I'm concerned, with my own alcoholism, and you know, I never did any opiates. That was, or maybe I did somewhere along the line, but it wasn't really widespread at that time. But you know, in the 60s, where I was, and but so whatever scenario, you know, to me it was like I arrived here on planet Earth, and okay, you go over there, live with that family, and this is what it's going to be. And as soon as I found alcohol, I was just like, what? You know, what am I doing here? You know,
Yeah.
no rule book, no handbook. And so as soon as I found alcohol, you know, everything made sense. Like we say in the program sometimes, that first drink fixed problems I didn't even know I had, you know. And it just made sense. And I said, okay, this is my ticket from here on out. And I was, well, I say naturally, but it's kind of a common scenario or something, but I was always underperforming in school and anything else, you know, and it was always, you know, drummed into me that, oh, no, you got a lot of potential. You could do this and you could do that. And I was just like, leave me alone, please, you know. And, you know, I just wanted to be free to, I figured, like, I didn't ask to be here. I didn't ask to do this, so I'm going to do it my way, you know. So that rebelliousness, too, I think that's a big...
Yeah. And it was the times, too. I mean, we're the first generation to say,
Well, I don't know. We were the first one, because after after World War I, you know,
Yeah.
the Lost Generation in the
Yeah,
20s.
here's
I
a
was
history
there.
thing. Danny is a history buff. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm just a buff. I don't
You're
know.
a beatnik. I know that. Yeah,
Along the way.
yeah. Jack Kerouac. I may have interrupted you, but
No, well, I was going to say, speaking of World War I, which of course we were, right? Speaking of, you know, my Irish grandmother used to tell me about her brothers in the Depression era, World War I, and then the Depression and stuff. And there wasn't any AA, and you know, a good number of them drank themselves out, you know, and the way I feel now, or after I got sober, the way I felt was, you know, they never had AA. It hadn't been
Right.
developed yet.
But I want to interrupt and say, I didn't. Either Susan and I were talking, or there was an article, but the Oxford group
Yeah,
began like in 1925, I think, and that was a very spiritual program, and that was a lot of AA. Bill and Bob pulled a lot of that stuff up with all the, you know, that's where all the God stuff comes from.
Yeah,
And
how they hammered out this program with you know, a barrel full of losers and misfits and lunatics, and you know, come out the other end with you know, an organic organization that you know.
so, how do you think that happened? What led us to where we are today?
With AA, I don't know. My feeling is, you know, Bill Wilson was you know, divinely inspired. Whatever you know, whatever your concept is of, you know, whatever your spiritual concept is or something, you know, he was, you know, he was a magic person, and like I say, I used to. After I got sober, I felt, you know, those guys, all my relatives I heard about, you know, preceding me and, you know, going down, burning out, dying, whatever, didn't have AA, didn't have a chance. There was no, you know, not widespread recovery available at that time. And I figured, wow, you know, I'm coming around in an era where there's, you know, the concept of recovery has been developed and it's made available for, you know, free of charge. And I just felt like felt like maybe I can break the chain a little bit, you know,
Right.
of hereditary disease. And, you know, I'd have to be a low dog not to take advantage of everything that was available for me, you know.
Yeah. I think when we got sober, which for me it was in the 80s, 82, and you're 81, I guess.
81,
Right.
yeah.
You've been
I think when I
sober.
first came around, I came back to stay in 1980, and I drank 3 times, 3 episodes that first year of that I was in AA, and I was getting panicky, you know. I got 2 sponsors, I'm going to meetings constantly, you know, reading the literature, trying to do everything. And finally, I had to realize after my last drink, which was a one-night stand, and I just had to realize that I wasn't even aware that I had a reservation tucked away in the back. You know, if things get totally crazy, if I'm going to fall down dying, well, I can always pick up a drink. And I had to slam that door, crank it shut, and say, that's it, you know, even if my head explodes.
But you went out, maybe you just said it, but you went out twice, right?
Three
when you
times.
in 3 times. And it didn't get any better, as they say. To my understanding of, and you know this also, it's the fellowship that made it happen. You know, you know, maybe not the exact same thing, but I did all this stuff, and I'm at home hating myself, thinking I'm very unique, but then to come into recovery, because to me, there's a big difference between not drinking or drugging when coming into recovery, trying to get better, being able to help other people. Both Danny and I and others still attend AA meetings, and for me, some NA. But we know what's going to happen because we've watched it happen, right? Get
Yep.
away from the fellowship, and I don't care, 20 years, 25 years, and
Yep,
Yeah.
the squirrels start running around and making the decisions. And the way I feel now is that, well, we say sometimes in AA, I can't stay sober. We can, And the way I feel about it now is, I know I can't stay sober alone. I tried it so many times, as I think all of us do, trying to beat the system, And and now today I wouldn't want to do it alone. Thank God I don't have to do it alone,
Right.
And yeah, the support and the sharing, whether it's learning from other people or passing it on, and I felt too at the end of my drinking, I knew I was in trouble, and people would say, "Hey, come on, let's go have a couple of beers and smoke a joint at lunchtime or something." And I was like, "Well, I don't know. I don't think not today, Or
Yeah.
well, come on, there's a big party. Or well, I don't know if And I didn't realize what was going on, but I felt as if I was totally misunderstood by all my friends. What's the matter with you? You like to party, and here you
Yeah.
are saying no all the time and
Right.
being dodgy and everything. And I realized, once I came into AA, I realized that these people understood me, that I was trying to stay out of trouble, trying to avoid, as much as I loved it, I knew I could get in trouble, in my own living room or something, let alone going to a concert. Toward the end, I didn't go to parties, concerts. It wasn't a social function of my drinking,
Yeah. So we got sober then, in the 80s, but even the acceptance, 3 minutes, and then we'll take a break and do another one. Christ, I haven't got to the second question, or maybe the second. And I lost my thought.
I don't know, like an old timer once said to me, I can talk for an hour on my bottom lip alone, so I don't know.
Like it. I think we should end it there. We'll be doing another half hour with Danny, so we'll wrap this one up. Thank
This program is brought to you by Amico Flooring of Fitchburg, Mass. Amico Flooring. Let us floor you.